Let's see, there's one person up there.
Yeah, just Doug.
Just Doug. Doug doesn't have any. It's here to
The thing
listen.
is, I can't communicate with Sean up there. I'm wondering why.
Oh,
We do not have any public comment up here.
oh, there. Yes. Okay. Any on the phones?
Say,
No.
say again?
Okay. On any phones?
No.
There's public comment.
No.
Okay. For 5 is if, when it comes up, disclosure. We have no other 6. Anyone, so we can get right into parks. Parks, trails, and dams.
Good morning. Last week I mentioned the memorial bench at D.D. Kennedy. That's the picture I provided out there. Guys, so everyone can see what type of bench we're going with now for our memorial benches. Cost, the person requesting is about a $900 bench. And we install it, and they're replacing current benches that are at the parks, so we're not adding benches everywhere with that. So that was added the other week at D.D. Kennedy. Really nice. As far as parks goes, not much new on the parks. The Cattail Head Trail paving project, the parking lot is shaped. They're paving downtown Amory now, so it's supposed to be paved by the end of the day today, if not tomorrow. So that parking lot will be completed that way. The next item on the agenda was the discussion at Summers Lake. That was put on the agenda due to it went to PTAG on Monday, kind of trying to solidify the project and if we're going to expand the parking lot. PTAG decided to get more information, whether that area would be used for equestrian or not. So we're meeting with the equestrian group in October, show them Summers Lake and the trail systems to see if it's beneficial to expand the parking lot or more parking. Stand on that one.
Sense, sure.
What Silver Slate, Mark Bozeman said one day something about Bill had a bad spot in it. That get corrected then.
No, it has not been.
Wash out. So there'll be some logging out there this fall or winter. And that's one of the conditions of the logger too.
And the cattail, that was sent in, so that's just on a DNR desk somewhere. Yeah. Cattail master plan.
The Cattail Master Plan, our response was sent to DNR. We had confirmation that DNR received it and they forwarded on to their legal team. We hope they get a response back within a week or two.
Anyone else? Any questions? Cool.
Right, thank you.
Yep. We have Amanda.
I can go get her.
Yep, let's have her.
I say something just as an aside that's not on the agenda? Just a statement. I just,
Yeah.
I'm on the museum board and we now have irrigation. The whole lawn and all the flower beds are all irrigated now. One of the museum board members.
Oh.
It's gonna look really nice. I mean, the lawn looks really nice from what you guys did. And that wall looks nice. It's starting to take shape. I'll look at the guys up in that tower.
Bring pictures.
They're coming down assessment on that.
Oh, good.
Structural engineer from LHP is coming to do that on site.
Here she comes. Oh,
Are you ready for me to start?
you are ready to go. We're-
So basically, what I'm going to do is just kind of go through the in-run process, what our county does, how it works, where we're at this year. So we did not do the in-run process last year because of the federal government's moratorium on foreclosures. They didn't specify counties, but all the counties in Wisconsin, the treasurers determined that they would follow the state's or the federal moratorium based on the COVID situation in the state. So we did not do any processes last year. This year we are going through, the way the in-run process works is after a property is unpaid after 3 calendar years, we can start the process. Process starts as of September 1st. We usually send out what they call certificate notices for all properties that have the current year delinquent. And we notify anybody who's 3 years at that time that we are starting the process. We start the process in October in our office. We give them a month to pay. Our goal is to get as many paid as possible so that we don't have to do. It costs more money for the county to go through the process than it does to have people pay. We work with people to get them on payment plans. Payment plans do not remove the state interest. It's just a way to get them paid. We try to have anybody who's on a payment plan catch up eventually. So maybe they take 11 months to pay the year that's delinquent and then 10 months the next one, so that after a 3 or 4 year period, they are actually caught up in current. Obviously, sometimes that doesn't work, but that's our goal. We have been very successful with the payment plans. We probably have 50 to 75 parcels on them. Some pay by check or come in with cash every month. Some we go and ACH out of their accounts. We can do it on the 5th or the 20th or both. Like I said, we've been very successful. So what we do in September and what we've been doing now is we have just notified the properties that we are in the process of starting the in-run process. And so we've been getting payments. We've already gotten quite a few. I think we notified about 200 some people. We are down to about 130 properties. Now, some of those are multiple properties by one person, but still they're individual tax ID numbers and individual properties. We expect to be under 100 by the time we actually start. What we do is we contact local title companies and we contract out with them and they do a title search. We pay the title company $50 per parcel they do a title search on. And if we have 3 title companies in the area that are interested, we split the parcels among them. So everybody who's said they're interested gets to do some of the searches for the county. We get the searches back between November and December. And at that time, we get the parcels ready. The next step in the in-run process is going to court. So usually in the month of January, we go to court. We wait till January because of budgeting, and that way we have it in the calendar year of the taking of the property. So the whole system and the budget happens in one calendar year. It works for us. Works out well. Once we get the title search back, we put a $165 fee on the property. That's our in-run cost. What we do is every couple of years we go through and we determine with the title, the cost of the title search, the cost of publication, the cost of the hours it takes our office to do it, determining how many parcels we have. We verify that that's about what it costs for us to do it. State law says we can charge what our costs are. We cannot charge anything over. We can't make a profit on doing fees. So we charge $165. So we put that on usually December, January also. Usually we put that on in the end of December actually. And then we get the parcels ready, take them to court. We get the paperwork ready. We send it over to Malia's office. They look through it, verify that everything looks right. They actually take it to court. Court comes back. We then notify everybody by certified notices to property owner, lien holders, and any other parties that we know of interest. So if we know we've been contacted by someone and they say, well, this person's passed away and this is where their children live, we make notes of that and we send it to them. We still send it to the address that we have on record, but if we have knowledge of anybody else, we send it certified mail to them also. We also send everything non-certified mail. There was actually a court case in either Alabama or Arkansas, one of the A states in the South, about 2006 or so, where the Supreme Court actually ruled on it. And they said because it was certified mail and they did not pick it up, they did not have notice. Their process is a little bit different. It was very close to Wisconsin. And so after that, almost all the counties in Wisconsin also send non-certified mail. So that way, if they don't pick up the certified, we don't get the non-certified back. Someone got it at that property. If we think there's renters living at the property, we send notice to the property if the bill goes to a different address. Our goal is to make sure everybody knows, because the more people that know that have an interest in the property, the better odds we will get that it'll get paid. That's our end goal. We then publish it in the local newspaper 3 times, the class 3 notification. And then we also put a note on the website that says, this is where the public, that says this is published in the paper, and here's a list of names. I think it's 90 days they have from that point to publish, and the certified mailings go out. We use a program called WALS, W-A-Z, to print all of our certified notices, and then it comes back electronically from them when the post office scans it. So we have a copy of the signatures as needed. So that's very handy. There's no cost to use the program. We just buy our envelopes from them, and it's well worth the cost of putting in the addresses. A lot of the properties have the same, go through it every year, so we have addresses in the system. We don't have to re-enter them all the time. Also for mortgage companies, a lot of times it's the same, banks, a couple dozen or so. Once the 90 days are up, we go through the remaining properties. Usually there's somewhere between 10 and 40. It varies greatly, but rarely are there more than 40. Those are the ones that actually come back into our name. At that point, Polk County is the owner, but there's a resolution that the county has that gives the previous taxpayer 45 days to redeem the property. So while we're the owner, they have an interest in it at that time. What we do after the 45 days is we notify, now it's going to be land information. We notify their office, these are the properties we've taken. These are the ones that have buildings on them. What we advise and what's been done in the past is if there's any buildings that may or may not have a person in it, the department does an eviction notice. We try to do it as early in the 45 days as possible, because there's nothing to get a payment like getting an eviction notice on your house. And the eviction notices are usually for 30 days, so they try to get them done in the first 15. So the eviction notice kind of ends at the same time that the 45 days notice ends, because at that point, if they haven't gotten out, we can start court actions, or the sheriff's department becomes involved, and then they no longer have an interest in the property. So after the 45 days is usually when, and during the 45 days is when now Bob's office will be looking at the property and determining, okay, this one we can sell right away, this one we might have to do some things on it. If there's any known issues with the property, we always talk to the departments. We had one about years ago that had been a meth property. Trailer had burned, but there was still a well. So we met with public health, administration, legal, and it was determined that public health would have buildings department go in and push in the well so that there was no chance of contamination left in the property. So anything like that that we know of, we notify the departments or get together before we take them and say, this is a situation. The county does not have to take the properties. The county can take the properties. So if it's not in the best interest of the county, sometimes we don't do it. There's been properties in one of the municipalities where they had put huge assessments on them, and it didn't pay for the county to take the property. In one case, we were told that as soon as the county took the property, they were going to condemn it, bulldoze it in, and put a charge on the property. So that would be that would be more than we could get it to sell for. So the county would be in a negative situation. So we chose not to take that. And eventually the city did something, worked with the taxpayer, and moved forward so that we never had to take ownership of the taxes we're taking care of. Filing bankruptcy does not remove your property tax burden. We are no longer allowed to take it. So we have probably at any point 5 to 12 properties in bankruptcy. We can't take the property, but it does not remove the taxes. It's one of those laws where kind of in a status. Sometimes with bankruptcy, they have to pay the current years, but you may have 4 years, so it's kind of weird looking in the system. Once the bankruptcy has been dismissed, then we can take the property if they do not have all of the past years paid. We do have to go through the process. We wouldn't have to wait a year if we've just finished or just started the last you know, if the bankruptcy is dismissed in, say, January, we'll have to wait till the next fall to take it because our process has already moved on. We don't take properties that are in a payment plan. We do have a 3 strikes and you're out rule. Again, the interest is not removed for any process. No matter what agreement you're in with the county or the bankruptcy courts, interest still accrues on the property. So we are still making our interest, no matter anything we do, we cannot dismiss the interest. So that's kind of the process for INREM. Once it goes to Bob's office, they will look at it, they'll assess it, they might go out, they might take someone from the building department with them, go out and look at the property. They might put new locks in the doors. They will look and assess it and get it ready for sale. We let them know how much the tax balance is on it. And then goal is obviously to sell for more than the tax amount. There has been cases where it's been determined by the committee that, okay, we want to sell it, and there's $5,000 in taxes, we can only get $4,000, but losing that $1,000 at least gets it back on the tax roll. And that has, you know, from looking at it from a long-term perspective, that's a better idea than just holding it as an exempt property. It's not always the case, but it has been the case for a few properties. Usually we make enough on the properties to overcome any negatives. For properties where we didn't make a profit. The first thing we have to do is we have to go in and pay the back taxes, because that's debt holding against the county. So if there's $3,000 in back taxes and you sell it for $3,500, first $3,000 go to back taxes, and then the $500 might go to other fees. And then anything extra goes into the profit, and that goes back to the county board, any overage. And if there's any profit over $100,000, there was a resolution passed about 3 years ago, I think, that says any profit over $1,000 or $100,000 goes back to the county board to be used for some specific purpose, which I don't quite
Yeah, on the
remember.
highway.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, on the highway. That was,
Yeah.
Brad Olson.
So anything over that, the $100,000, if there's a profit, goes back to the county board anyways, but it just goes into the general fund unless it's over $100,000. So that's kind of the process. My office usually clears out the cost of 165, usually covers most of the cost for mailing, so the certified, which gets very expensive these days. Publications in the paper and stuff like that. So any legal fees that we have extra. So that's kind of a rundown of the run process, how it starts, where it goes. So right now, because we didn't do it last year, we're working on 2017s and 2018s. We did send an extra letter last year to all the property owners saying, we are not going to complete the interim process, but next year, if you haven't paid the 17s, you will have 17s and 18s. So we really strongly advise payment plans. We did have a lot better results from that than we have in the past. It tends to be a lot of the same properties, so they just got behind for some reason, whatever it may be, job change, sickness, even something as little as a car issue. You can't no longer have your funds. And so we have a lot of properties that they're just 3 years behind. And every year we send them the notice, and then we get the payment by December, and then next October we send the notice for next year. So we do have quite a few properties like that. Every time anybody comes in like that, we always say we can do a payment plan. Really push that. We have people that pay as little as $25 a month. And then when they get extra money, they'll send it in over the year. We have some that take out like $500 twice a month. So whatever we say, this is what we'd like, and then we work with them to get that or a little less. Is there any questions?
Okay, so right now, you said there's what, probably about 200 you're working on,
About 130 already.
130.
Yeah.
Now this 90 days and 45, is that what we give them? Is that the state?
The
What's-
90 days is a state process for NREM.
That's the state's.
Yeah, so we go to court twice. The first gives them 90 days, the second says the property's in the county's name, and then there's a 45-day where they still have the interest, but it is technically Polk County's property.
We give them that extra 45.
Was 90. About 2
Was.
years ago, we met with the board. They really wanted 60. Some really wanted to stay with 90. We all compromised at 45. So
1 and 0, I think.
yeah, someone at 0.
Someone wanted 0.
But there was a lot of discussion and we compromised at 40.
How much is in the account right now? How much
I
are you
think
have to cover?
back taxes. I think it's under 300,000.
So it is down compared to
is
some
down.
years.
Yep, because the Menards property are the ones behind Menards, which I just called Menards property. Those had a big dollar amount. Those were sold last year, I think it was. Yep, so that really helped. Those were the ones I think with the largest outstanding balance that we had.
Right now, we're at the 300, so we're not in the millions like we
No.
were. Okay.
I think the highest we got was 600,000 or 800,000. So. And then we haven't really looked much at the specific properties yet. Elsa Thompson in my office is the one who does most of it. We'll start looking at the specific properties closer to the end of the month to see, okay, well, this one we need to see about. We look to make sure there wasn't a property split where it's a new owner and they're not aware, stuff like that, in which case we send notices to the new owner and the old owner. So a lot easier to spend $10 in notices right now than it is to have to deal with it after it goes to courts and stuff like that.
So pretty much that last year just kind of held us back a little bit.
Yeah.
So you got the few extra you got to deal with this year.
And most of them that have 17s also have 18s. Now, we may have properties where there was something, they might have refinanced the mortgage. It's amazing who doesn't open their mail. Because we send out notices, send out the tax bill that has a star on it if there's a delinquent taxes on that property. We send out a notice in June or July stating this is what's due. We send out the September notices. The tax bill and the September notices are required by mail or by law. This year, we also sent out notices in March and in August. So we've sent out a lot of notices, and it has really, we've gotten a lot of response for it. The amount that we transferred from the current year's taxes that is, as of September 1st, it's automatically considered delinquent was down about 200,000. And the amount of notices that we sent out down were 500,000 in June and July. So from the last couple of years. So it's really helped notifying huge amount of people that use credit cards. Any credit card payments, the fees are paid by the consumer. Because by state or federal law, I'm not sure which one, we cannot say tax bill is $1,000, get a credit card payment for $1,000 and part of that towards a credit card fee. We have to get all of the $1,000 that they've paid for taxes against taxes, and the fees that the county doesn't charge taxpayer for credit cards has to come out of a separate revenue or expense account. Can't come out of the tax account. So all counties in the state pretty much go through 1 to 2 different credit card companies that they use. They're kind of the major national ones that do tax processing. So it's 2.39% to pay if you pay with a credit card or debit card. If you use an e-check, which is just you give us the routing number and the account number, it comes automatically out of your checking account. It's a $1.50 flat fee. And the federal government had a process, so Visa, MasterCards that are debit cards, it's a flat $3.95. And so we go through, sometimes they don't know if it's a debit card or not. Don't know. We check to see what's the cheapest way they can get it. And then we also have the box out front, and that's been very useful.
Oh, sure.
We leave envelopes out in front of our door with notes, and sometimes we'll just come in, grab the envelope, put it in, and put it in the drop box. Worked very well for us. Any other questions? I'm doing it a while, so.
I know, I didn't know how that whole process worked.
Yeah.
A lot.
Oh, yeah.
There's 2 different legal processes you can use in the state of Wisconsin. One is the in-rem process, which we use, which goes to court twice. The other is what's called the tax deed process, and that is different. And the main difference, from what I can tell talking to other treasurers, because we haven't done it since the 80s or 90s. is that they have the right to come back 2 to 3 years after the property is in the county's name, which means there's a delay in selling it. Some other counties, I think St. Croix County does it, because we've had people that have contacted us and said, well, we can come back 2 years. And I'm like, you can't, because we do in rem, and we've gone to court twice. So you can't come back 2 years from now and say this. So, but that does delay selling it. You can still, I think, sell it, but you might have to pay the taxpayer within 2 years if they come back and say, want to claim that. There's something about that with that. I don't know exactly. So, and some counties do both. They do the in-rem for vacant land, or for properties with improvements, and tax deed for vacant land. But most of them do just one. It's just easier.
So we won't see any this year, will we? Pretty much, we won't see any for sale this year.
Right. Unless there's any leftover pieces that you guys plan to.
We just have those 4 properties we identified.
From before, yeah.
Yeah, that auction closes October 5th, so I'll bring those for you on the 6th.
Well,
And that was
haven't
just-
due.
Yeah, and that was going just to our inventory, basically, to
Yep.
keep up to date what we have. So by the time you get it to us, hoping it's down to that less than 20, shooting for it.
Yeah,
again.
that's our goal. So the first time that goes into print, usually it'll probably be about usually 70 to 100 and something, depending on the year. Back in 2009, when the housing bubble crashed, we would have 400 properties. And that was a lot of work. But now if we have 100, 120, it's a good year. So
By the time it comes back to us,
I personally prefer if there's a mortgage on the property, because the mortgage company will pay it. Takes the responsibility off of us. Sometimes if they have no liens on it, we really try to contact them, because nothing else, your house up for sale, because you're going to make more than you're going to if we sell it. If it is their primary residence and they've homesteaded the property, there's a formula that the state gives us that we have to share the profits with them. So we take out all of our costs, then they get the first so many dollars and then a percentage of dollars after that. But still, if they sell it, they're going to make more. So try to contact people and work with them as much as we can.
and the last time when we did do it, well, like 12 wasn't there?
I think there's only 12 that came by the time it went to court the second time.
Yeah, I thought it was like unbelievable way down.
And a lot of times, if there's a bigger amount, it means that like there might have been a development with 15 properties, or there might be a taxpayer who owned 5 or 6. A lot of times, if there's a bigger number, it's still not as many, but there's more actual properties per owner. It'll be interesting to see after COVID what happens here. We did notice there would be a spike in payments after all the stimulus checks were given out. So that was really positive for the county. And now with the child care or the child credit, we're hoping that some people pay when they get that every month. So, but we did definitely notice a difference after the stimulus. Which was real positive. All right, any other questions? Yep, no
I
problem.
think we're good. Thank
You
you.
can always come in our office, and we do put monthly. We have a delinquent notice that gives all the delinquent properties, whether it's 2020, which is our current year, or previous, that's on what we call an FTP site. And the banks definitely do use that and go through and find any of their people on it. So we just found it was easier to put it up there every month than have people calling us and asking. So that works really well. All right.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Jason.
Documents.
No.
There. That's text.
Should we open up the public hearing?
Let's open it up.
Hearing is open at
Four. First one is the amendment to Chapter 42, Article 1 and 3 of the Polk County Court of Ordinances relating to use provisions for towns that have enacted their own zoning. What is being shown here on the screen is the proposed text that we went over at the last meeting. Everything in red is the town changes to give the towns the authority. We did reach out to Farmington and they confirmed that they would like to take and have their own ability to regulate the uses within their shoreline. So in order to make it easier and to exempt them out of each use provision going through the ordinance, we provided a list of the three towns, St. Croix Falls, Garfield, and Farmington, right there. And then you'll see that we actually refer back to that list right here in case that list ever changes in the future. Hopefully that'll provide less amendments than that going down the road. But basically, and that we would give the towns the ability to comment on any use zoning and that within the town area. Going down, all of our normal zoning districts like residential ag 5 and that would not apply. We would be creating a town zone classification and that would be mapped out on the GIS as well and that for those towns. We would no longer be enforcing farm yard or a barn yard setback. And we would not be enforcing and that how many accessory buildings could be placed on a riparian parcel. We got that exempted out there at the top. Signs would all be now enforced by those three towns, not the county. Brings us. Okay, our boathouse rules as far as size and stuff, that would then be able to be controlled by each town individually. So instead of taking and adding a provision where the size was on everything, we just changed it right here. That number 7, that 10, that's a muni code fix, and that will take and talk to them about correcting that as well. So must have been something that their legal team or editors missed. Bunkhouses and that would now be enforced by the town, as well as any large people and that for swine now be required to be enforced by those towns, not the county. There was some text there and that where we're just adding that town zoning classification. There you can see town zone number 13, very similar. I didn't make any changes. I'm just kind of going back through that quick on everything.
Cool thing, yes.
Especially if there's somebody in that online. So when we did the comprehensive rewrite in May of 2020 for the shoreline area, where we put all these zoning classifications into the shoreline area, we had a lot of public comment that said that all class 1s should be R1 within 300 feet of the ordinary high. So that's what provision C is here. Of course, now each town is going to have their own zoning classifications for those shoreline areas. So. As
shoreline wetland, this is all directly from NR 115. It's basically word for word. So we're not able to make any changes to that. It really doesn't affect any uses of the towns anyway. I just left all of the zoning classifications in there, and that just provides some context, but all of this here is no longer gonna be in effect in these towns. Basically just our commercial districts, industrial, natural resources. Added this here and that, just so that when people are looking at our GIS map and they see a zoning classification of town zone T1, that it at least refers them back to the respective town ordinance so that they know that that's where they need to go and look. So maybe not needed, but I just thought that'd be, providing clarity in that because we are going to have to map this. So
I like that, that you added that.
Going down, minimum lot sizes and that's all NR 115, so that's all going to stay the same. Same thing with impervious surfaces. The county still got to enforce that because that's an NR 115 standard. Shoreline protection area, like the shoreline buffers and the walkways going down to the lake, we still have to enforce all that because that's NR 115. Well, boat launching sites, and that were a conditional use permit. Now it'd be just a normal permitted use. We don't see too many of these. And that, I think that's kind of an old ordinance provision. For one, that might conflict with how a town wants to enforce new boat launching sites. But for us, we used to require a filling and grading permit, and that going through the Board of Adjustment on steep slopes. Now we enforce that just through our office. So I think we've got enough other criteria here and that any erosion concerns and that are going to be taken care of through that filling and grading permit anyway. And I don't know what else the Board of Adjustment would do. Being a conditional use is something that's generally allowed anyway. So I think we can just remove that completely and still have the permitting for the filling and grading through our office as long as they meet these things. And those are all going to be permitted by the DNR. So mitigation, that's with the amount of impervious surface. Off-street parking is the next change. Every town ordinance and that probably has their own off-street or their parking requirements, so that we don't conflict and that we exempted those towns from our county parking. Manufactured home parks, and that of course there's going to be manufactured home parks that are going to have their own definitions, their own size of their lots, the number that they can have at each town ordinance. So they're no longer going to apply to those 12 conditions. Travel trailers and that we assume that they would take and have their own travel trailer ordinances, so they're exempted right here. I'm going to leave that blue for further on for our next hearing. I believe that should be it.
That was all
Changes for the use town stuff, and the use town regulation. Give that authority back to the town. So the petition to amend the ordinance and that I filed with the county clerk on August 26th. We did do the proper 2-week notice prior to this hearing. And basically in that we advertised it as 2 consecutive public hearings, one on this and one on the park model language. So, in other words, all adequate notices were provided and that everybody.
Sure. So that being said, on the first part of the use in the shoreline, any questions on that? That's what we went through.
Exactly. I did not make one word change. Nope.
Has anybody notified us of any changes? I haven't heard anything.
I haven't received any letters of support or objection. The DNR was also provided notice prior to the hearing. We haven't heard anything back from them, but of course, if this goes through the county board, then we would send it off for their official, blessing and that, or
Sure.
acceptance of it, so.
Did go to town of Farmington's meeting, so. Well, then that one,
I think we can just close the hearing on that one and move on to the other one.
yeah, let's, should we do a motion if we close that, Cleo, to keep them separate? Both,
I think you can do them both at the same time.
oh, yeah, if we're not having any,
I think we can just roll into the other one then. So,
okay,
you
sure.
can just go down to page 40 then, Bob. Oh, it's there, right there. Yep. So the guy that came in and provided public comment to you was purchasing a park model travel trailer or camper, wanted to be able to leave it on the property year round. I have had several different emails from him checking up on where this was at, and that going through on. My understanding for the travel trailer rules in the county is to take and understand what they're doing for their sewer system out there, to try to keep nicer looking travel trailers out there, and that's so that, you don't end up with a bunch of the 1970s campers peppering the landscape of the county. So we took and came up with an annual permit, just similar to like we do for a normal travel trailer. That would basically require them to have a state-approved sewer system, that they have to meet all of the setbacks for a dwelling, and that whereas a normal travel trailer only has to meet it and that for an accessory building. But if this is something that's going to stay on the property year round and be used as a residence, then that I figured it'd probably justify going to the little bit bigger setbacks. When I did some research on what makes a park model different from a travel trailer, one of the common things is that their pitch is able to be removed because they're typically pulled one time to wherever they're going and then they're skirted. So that's that in there. The age of the trailer, that's kind of to keep those hunting camps, especially up north and that, where I can see this provision falling in instead of somebody buying a cabin and that they could take and place this out there, and all of a sudden, that 40 years has gone by, they still got that old camper out there. So this would be enforced by the annual permit, that we'd be able to do that. And by keeping it somewhat newer, and that hopefully we can find any brochures or whatever to verify that it is actually built as park model and not travel, for in case that comes up on a complaint especially. An outlot is a lot that doesn't meet our normal building lot dimensions, so they're generally only allowed for an accessory building. No minimum outlot size, so I want to make sure then that they shouldn't be placed on an outlot, because you could literally create 5,000 square foot lots and have a park model in each one. So there's things there that I'd be really concerned about. Leasing or rental as a residence is prohibited, so that's kind of going back to our tourist rooming house stuff, and that you can only rent the main building, and that I think that condition would be important, and that in case we have a main dwelling on a lake lot, that they can't all of a sudden just park a park model in the back and start renting that out. Even if it was a long-term rental, that you're increasing that amount of density of people using that small lake lot. And it only makes sense to have them where they are allowed to have a home anyway, and that we don't want to take and have them in a commercial district and that. And then you guys had the condition of only inhabited from May 15th through December 1st. So in other words, they can use it the same amount of time period as a travel trailer. That's going to keep them from having it as their permanent residence, but also in that it's going to allow them to keep it on the property. More
Is this people that have permitted campgrounds? That doesn't change anything.
Campgrounds are going to be the same. So
Yeah.
this would be for a vacant piece of land.
Yep.
So
I just wanted, somebody had asked me that, and I said, I thought, I never heard us talk about campgrounds regarding this. It's just,
that annual permit would be the same as our seasonal travel trailer permit, I assume, and that'd be a $250 permit. So our seasonal travel trailers and that, what we do right now is we actually issue a county sanitary permit, because they're basically hooking up to that sewer system. And that's good for 2 years. And then they do the seasonal permit every year. So if you break down, the actual fee is $325 a year for a seasonal travel trailer. These, because they're hooked up all the time, they don't have to have that county sanitary. So that's kind of how the fee schedule would look right now on them.
That's how they get their address also.
And then we defined a park model. I think that might be at the very top. Or no. Definition. Park model, and that's so Brian with the health department, and then they have an issue in their code and that for exceeding 400 square feet in size. So we wanted to make sure that we had that 400 square foot max in there. That I got about the hitch being removed, and that they don't have their own gray or black water tanks, because usually they're put into place and they're hooked up to whatever facility or tank that there is there. So that is kind of how it seems like they're defined. That's what you guys agreed with. I haven't made any changes to any of this. So. Those were the only 2 changes for the park models.
Questions on that? Did any comments on this either?
Just that guy just checking in to
Just
see what
checking
the
in.
process was and that, but he didn't submit any other comments or feedback.
What else did there? Okay. Good, so move. These 2.
Very, and that, with the other 2 agenda items that I've got today, now that we've had the public hearing, we maybe, and that if there was idea or whatever to make some other ordinance revisions, we can maybe put them together as one package deal and go to the county board.
Okay, we should deal with these 2 though, to move them on, shouldn't we? The public hearing, we should close the public hearing, I think.
Close the public hearing in that, and then if you want to make the recommendation to move them on, that'd be fine in that, but you might, but I guess what staff's saying is that we might want to package them in that as to like all the amendments at once, and that otherwise we could have one version of the ordinance in October and one version of it in November. You know what I mean? And that, so it might look better if it was all, so we have one amended version, not 2 months in a row.
Yeah, 2 months in a row, okay. Is this one on this, are any of these scheduled yet for next week?
It was too early to get on
It was too
September's agenda. We really support Jason's suggestion
Yeah.
of packaging them all for November. October, you're gonna be pretty busy with.
Sure.
So that's our,
But we could do A and B and move on.
I really think like the park model one, that because that guy's able to have it there until December 1st
Anyway,
anyway,
yeah.
we're not gonna be, creating any hardship with him.
Anybody that's got that, okay.
I'm gonna guess that, I mean, to make a nice smooth transition, maybe around the first of the year for the town use stuff, then that they take over the uses at the first of the year. I don't know what your thoughts are, Sharon, on that, but that might be a really nice thing. And that where we'd be able to get a memo out to them and say, okay, effective January 1st, 2022, you're doing the use stuff. So that's kind of what my thoughts on it, and that's so that we have a nice clean deadline.
So we could do it in November, but we could say it isn't in effect till the first.
Correct. That would be in the resolution and that for that ordinance amendment that they would take effect on January.
On January 1st. Okay, that would make a lot of sense.
It does. I think that's fine. But
Okay.
you mean for the town stuff, because
Yeah.
the park model stuff will be
We'll
immediate.
still go through and then upon
That's the
publication.
county stuff, even though
Yeah.
your stuff is.
Yeah.
It pretty much should be doing this anyway.
Okay.
So I'll entertain a motion then to move these 2 on to the board. Possibly November. How should I have them say that? That we can move these forward? We don't need date specific, do we?
Don't.
We don't need date specific. If they can be moved forward.
Okay. I
If
make a
we-
motion that we move
Recommendation.
with the recommendation. A and both A and B.
There a second?
Yes, second.
Second, okay, well, Doug, okay. All those in favor then say aye. Most the same, okay, so then that will. Basically, well, let's staff and stuff set that schedule, was what we can say.
have to draft the new
Draft the
resolution.
resolution.
Resolution 2021 is done.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be before, because that just directed us to do this.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I don't know that we'll need to bring it back here. We probably just have Kim sign it once we draft.
Sure,
If that's okay.
yeah, to get it to whenever and,
Probably like to draft like one main resolution with everything.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
Yeah.
it'll be forthcoming is what I'm saying.
because if you put this in everybody's packet.
Well, there's two other items too that could change.
We could possibly remove, that like county board packet, a lot of those zoning classification districts and just keep the changes in there.
Sure.
If it makes it shorter, something that they'll read.
That they would read them because otherwise. If they were excited, they should have been here. The public hearing and not babble us when we get down to the very end.
I hope you say that on the floor.
Yeah, I am. Yes, if you got nothing to say, you should have been here. That's why we do these things. All right. Now, some discussion on the ag tourism at farm stays, those, which would be the travel trailers also.
Read.
All right, so kind of right in with the travel trailer provisions here. Just going off from what you had at your last meeting, I kind of heard 333, so that's kind of what I stayed with. Annual permit, and that's taken to be able to operate as a temporary campground for up to 3 weekends a year. That was a comment from Supervisor Olson, and that they provided via email to us. For educational farm stays, if the following requirements are met, maximum of 3 trailers, camping units, or tents on a parcel per night. We do define travel trailer and camping unit already. I think tent is pretty self-explanatory. Maximum length of stay is 3 nights. With that, that we do say 3 units, but we don't have any occupancy. I don't know if that's something that you guys wanted to talk about. I didn't throw it in there because it wasn't talked about before. So if I had 3 big wall tents and I got 300 people there, I don't know. It's up to you guys. Provision 3, must obtain a temporary campground permit through Polk County Public Health Department for each event. That would be what would be required for that. We talked a little bit about acreage and that, so I threw in there just because we were talking 3s on everything. Property owner has 3 acres of one parcel or contiguous parcels under common. So if they've got multiple, like 2 acre lots that they would still qualify for. Primary reason for the state is education about the farm. That was from Paul Isaacson's letter that he submitted to you. Number 6, owner operator of the farm must reside on site. That was another thing that Paul had suggested. And it also mentioned that the farm shall be the owner's operator's primary source. A little bit gray on how to enforce that and that, but I think it's pretty clear if that's their full-time occupation, that it'd probably be must provide 24/7 sanitary facilities. That's actually a condition that Brian Hobbs with Health Department suggested. It seems kind of a little bit goofy, but if somebody's willing to take and let their house be open 24 hours a day and that for people to come in and use it out of their camper, because a lot of people don't want to use their camper facilities, or if they're in a tent and they're not going to have any facilities, that would qualify for them to use their house. If they're not willing to let them use their house, then they would have to put in a portable satellite and that. So that's where I'm trying to catch both of them. In that is just that they have to provide open access to a sewer system, whatever it might be.
That's more for the health side, that number 8.
Right. And then, 8 and 9 are both then.
Both the health ones.
Because Brian's also going to require them in that to have a potable water source and that. And That could be, and that being within 400 feet of a well. So again, if they have their house open or a mudroom portion of their house open where they can get potable water, that's gonna qualify. Or like Bowes Mud Bog and Trollhagen and that, because they don't have a well close enough, then they have to provide free bottled water. That to everybody. So that's where that's kind of just, you gotta have a potable water source. Number 9 is what we talked about at the last meeting about having designated campsite areas so that we can conform and that to the other travel trailer provisions, which is a 25-foot wide by 40-foot deep campsite and having 15 feet of green space in between the campers and being able to have parking for them and that on site. So they have to provide 1.5 cars and that a parking space per campsite. So that's kind of where that's coming from. A lot of that comes back to the carbon monoxide and having campers too close to each other if they have their windows open and they're running a generator or a heater for that matter. And then you guys had mentioned a provision about a stay, and I just put it out there. If property owner fails to comply with conditions listed above, their temporary permit would be revoked and cannot be renewed until the following year. So if it happens early in the summer, then they're gonna be shut down all summer. If it's at the end of the summer, then they're only shut down until the following years. Being that you don't have a specific date range of when these events can happen, yeah, basically it's year round right now. We don't really know how long it's gonna be. So you probably could throw in something like it's, a new permit shouldn't be issued for 3 months or can't be issued. I mean, if you want to make it specific, but
Well, I would at least limit it if something happens. So this has to be published pretty much to get feedback going. We should. It's published, move forward this way to get feedback.
you want to go down a little
Got
bit.
feedback on that, because.
When is that farm days anyway?
You know,
Is that this one?
what?
The farm day thing. Farm stay.
Invitation.
That invitation, is that like the 27th of September?
Yeah, I think it is. It's at the end of the month.
Is that towards the end of the month? So that would maybe get some feedback.
I think we have time there,
Not rush in.
Mayor Isaacson was here asking for, the,
Illegally be able to do it.
right, next spring,
Yeah,
because there isn't a sense of urgency. This is the initiative, it's countywide, but mostly around the Amory area, those CSAs and farm
Yeah.
to table outfits. There's
He had
that.
asked for 5 campers in his thing, that you can definitely bump that to 5. I mean, there isn't anything in that from us or public health. 3 campers is gonna be treated the same as 5, as it is 10, whatever it might be.
yeah.
So
1 to
I
25.
just kept everything 3, 3, 3, and this proposal, you guys can do
27
whatever
it
you
is.
want with it.
Of course. So that one on the 27th, that'd be a good one to have this at least tentatively move forward for a public hearing so that they would see that and see what they think. They get it to that meeting too, which is on the 27th. So we wouldn't have to bring this back till second meeting in November. So
Supervisor Olson isn't here and he's interested in this. I don't know, maybe it's worth, one more meeting.
yeah, I'll tell them.
Yeah, he is, I think he is.
Yeah.
He's been, emailing us.
Yeah.
Very-
But I mean, that's it. I mean, if we got to start somewhere. And if they're going to have that meeting there, I mean, that would be a good start. I mean, to at least see what people think of those. And they have to realize that public health, Brian Hobbs is it's in there in campgrounds. That's what a lot of them are trying to get around.
Talked to him, I ran him through and that, everything here today actually, and that's where Brian asked to take and add a couple of those conditions.
Sure.
Potable water and bathroom, it just gives him another layer of enforcement. We work good back and forth together. And that because if they violate our condition and we pull our permit, then that gives him really solid grounds to be able to pull his permit or his license. So,
They said it's advertised on both permits, almost, pretty much, so they understand it and see it up front.
Yep.
And so like if we issue one of these and that, the same way the way we do with like a tourist rooming house, we had a printout and that with all those conditions, it goes right on the back of their application and that, so that they have all those, it's tied directly to their permit. We would be doing the same thing with this stuff.
Oh,
So,
okay.
anyway.
Sure.
You guys kind of asked what a farm was and that at the last meeting. And since
A few definitions.
the two guys that were most interested in aren't here, maybe we can get through it.
quick.
So I Googled it. And a farm means an area of land and its buildings used for growing crops and rearing animals, typically under the control of one owner or operator with at least $1,000 of agricultural products produced and sold.
Has to be your annual.
You should take, why don't we take the one out of 383?
383 per farm? I'd have to look at it, I guess. And I simply Googled it. I put like 3 of them different ones together. One had that annual income
Yeah.
and that, and then the other one was just without that.
I think we gotta take annual incomes out. It's like some of the other old ordinances, we had to take some stuff out. But I think 383 has it in there for definitions for a farm, because they had that for different
What's
things.
that?
But I mean, they have one where it refers back to where the state says what number is it, doesn't it? Have you seen that, where farm is defined in state statutes?
There it is.
I think it's
Some
more than
place.
once.
You want to go with that?
But I think 383 has it. I mean, we had it, which is my point.
Yeah.
I think it's in there. Nothing else. I got that with me.
I'll look to see how it's been defined at the state. And then I'm sure it's probably been defined multiple times in each administrative code for different things too, so.
It's defined
It might
different
have
in a few
different definitions,
places.
context too.
You got farm preservation and some of that stuff, so that they, and then all that changes again.
Give us a choice, A, B, C.
Sure. I'll give you multiple options.
Or if it's a state statute, just refer to it, make it fight them. Because it would have to be 35 acres or more, I think. So that
There's any number of.
smaller
people
farms.
Out, and they have it doesn't even have to be a small farm, it could be a big farm.
Yeah.
Where they even.
Looking like Carlson's,
Yes.
the people like Cash Crop have, 2,600 acres and stuff, boom, 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 they get 3 trailers there. People that
But you don't always have income.
Most
Yeah,
farmers
that's
try
why
to
you have
show
to take that off.
Make less than $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying, I'm trying to show that. for them.
But now you've worked out, right?
That's serious paperwork on that.
Are we supposed to have any more comments today or just wait until?
I would say let's get it out there. If you have any more, if you think we should add some or do anything. I mean, I think we got to get something out there to start with. This would be a good start. Do you have, Doug, or do you have something?
You can put it on our county website.
You're not talking about having a formal public hearing, just getting it out there.
Just getting out there
Yeah,
for
okay.
public comment. Yeah, not have after that meeting and stuff too. Because if they get a good turnout, they might, get all them other people there that want to do this, see what they think.
That would be good.
The people that actually want to go and park trailers on their land, we should get some of their. That would help. But if we get it out for a few weeks or something in that meeting, get it out the fall. That I think. would help. Then Brad would chew it up, it'll be completely rewritten. So
Right, send a copy of supervisor rules.
yeah. Okay, so that's the farm stay one, and that one's coming out.
So the next one on the agenda has to do with condos.
think there's some desire maybe to possibly beef up the county's condo regulations. Is what I've kind of understood it. So we did an email out to all of our fellow zoning administrators throughout the state. I got a few responses back. A lot of them didn't have any good answers because a condo is simply a form of ownership. It's no different than a partnership or an LLC. And the issue that we had, Polk County, Jeff Hugie and Brian Benson from Benson Wa fought over this quite a bit up on the Easy Living up on Bona Lake by Wilkins there, because that was a campground. And our old ordinance had a conditional use requirement that if you're creating a condominium, that you had to go through and get conditional use approval. Well, it came through in that no, you don't actually have to because of it being that form of ownership. So prohibiting condos and that, as well as making a special requirement for them, going through conditional use or a special permit, would probably not stand. And doing a moratorium on them, and that would be probably considered a development moratorium, which we're not able to do anymore as well. So we really, I think, in my opinion, we really have to look at it as far as the density standard goes and trying to regulate it by the number of principal structures allowed per buildable lot. But with that being said, Bayfield County came back and they've got kind of a different aspect to it, and they call it a MUD, or a multi-unit development, where they're trying to basically limit condos just like we're trying to do. And if you scroll down through here, they've got this as an actual conditional use development. So they're not regulating based on the type of ownership, they're regulating on the number of principal structures built on a property. So it goes through the conditional use process. They've got some prerequisite criteria here, if you will, like having 2 acres and 200 feet of frontage. We could take and tailor any of these conditions. They've got open space requirements, and they've even broken it down further in that for open space requirements if there's public sewer involved, because we do have a few lakes that have that around them, so they might vary a little bit. Let's go right on down. Right there, yep. It also goes and talks about the different zoning classifications in which you can place multi-unit development, which I think gives us another tool in that to say that, okay, maybe we allow these in our RA5 zoning district, but maybe we don't allow it in our straight R1 districts, which make it a prohibited use around most of our class 1 lakes for the 3, that unless the zoning is changed. So I've got a copy of this for everyone. Just to kind of start the conversation so you can see what that is. I don't know how much more detail you'd like to go into today on it.
So this is our section 13-129?
Oh, this is directly from Bayfield County.
This
And this is how they've got it. And that, but like I said, the main things that I like about it is they've got minimum acreage, minimum lot width, you know, and that criteria in here. I'm not saying that it has to be the same. I'm just saying that they're kind of hitting all the big points. They've got those two. They've got open space requirements for public and private sewer, which is why we've got, you know, a 1 acre minimum lot size and 100 feet of frontage to start with. It's because of our private sewer systems. And if you get lots too small, or if we get 9 houses on a 2 acre lot, you know, where's all that waste going to be going? So it kind of goes back to that. And they've also got zoning district classifications where they're basically allowing it in some zoning classifications and not in others. So I just thought it kind of hit the main points. What's that? F1 forestry. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, all those are not going to comply with our stuff. We would change that out, you know, for our zoning classifications. But we also could maybe add to take and beef this up too, to the top. Kind of a general provision. Not in this. right there. Just a general statement, you know, about, any future development after the effective date of the ordinance, and that shall not be developed with a higher density than what's allowed under this section, which is our minimum lot size, and that for each buildable site. And then also duplexes and multifamily units shall be each counted as a residential. Each unit of that building.
Well, it's a really rough start. I think if the committee wanted to take and do that general provision and then maybe create another use for the MUDs and create another section with kind of criteria like this, it might be an option in that legally enforce a condo type of development.
That's multi-unit,
Yeah.
which has a different definition as a condo, because the condo has that common ownership and no setbacks. So it helps a little bit, but you can still do a condo and get around this one. Because a condo still has that, the walls, the lot line and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's where placing multiple units on one lot, because of the condo, because it's all one lot, you know, and that's where it fall into this, is because we'd be trying to put multiple principal structures all on the common area, if you will, and that's all considered one lot.
I mean, you can take one lot, put one huge building and have 6 condos in it.
And that's where my general.
Still.
Yep.
And get by this one, I haven't read this one.
No, that's where.
The density would cover it.
This provision is where I'm hoping to catch that as far as each unit. And that, so I don't think that this is enough as it is alone. And that because of that big condo, like you might see in Florida with, 4 or 6 in one building. That's where I think having the duplex and multifamily units shall be each counted as a residential principal structure for each unit. You know, so if you got a 4-plex, you gotta have enough land for 4 acres and 400 feet of frontage.
Okay.
I'm trying to get there. Maybe needs to be wordsmith a little bit.
Yeah, we might have, because when you have. That's how they're getting around the other stuff.
Classification of the
Yeah.
lake too.
Yeah.
Right, and I'd love to come out and just say 1 acre, 100 feet of frontage on all this, but depending on our lake classifications, and that could be 150 feet and 60,000 square
Yeah.
feet for a 2, and then a 3 is gonna be different too, and it could even vary in that based on the zoning district too, so. It's a little bit gray that way, so I can't come out and just say 100 feet, 1 acre. So that's where we reference this section, which says lake classification sizes and stuff.
I have this one from the state that's, it's the statute 703 and something like that, so you can't discriminate, you can't do this.
Right.
So we got-
Put it this way, provision that comes out and says condominiums are prohibited in the shoreland areas would probably be now.
Yeah,
So,
so just multi-units can't have.
because it'd be the same type of rule as saying an LLC is not allowed, I mean, it's an ownership type.
Yeah.
That's basically what Fugie and Benson were in a big fight on, so.
Fight is to get around the state provisions of a subdivision, is
Yeah.
what the condo unit is.
In our subdivision ordinance, we do have a condominium review of it, but that was put in there in 2017 because we wanted to make sure that these condo plats tied back to the section corners, and so that everything fit on our map, because otherwise we were getting really poorly drawn maps that were just kind of like, oh, it's this parcel, and there was no links back to anything. So then if you think about it, sure, the lot boundaries may be tied back, but the units themselves never tied back to anything, and that, so now we have these units that are kind of floating out there, and if you look at the condos that we have left in the county, they're not very accurate, as far as where that building was, so, because we never had that review, so.
But it sounds like it's good we're starting this discussion then.
They've been, an issue of that. We've never seen much of it here, and that because I don't think our banks and stuff are as familiar with how to deal with condos as they are maybe down south.
Yeah.
And we have more people wanting to dissolve condos than actually create them. So I know one, and that probably the biggest one we've got is right out here on East Balsam condo. And then I think there's 15 or 17 dwellings out there. They'd love to get out, out the condo, but they don't have enough land and they don't have enough frontage on the water and that to be able to get them back into a normal conforming lot. So kind of stuck.
Sure.
The bad thing about condos too is it's very difficult as far as administering like the impervious surface regulations. Because now instead of just having one house on one lot, you count up all the square footage of impervious for all the units and that for the whole parcel, because technically it's all one lot. All you own when you own a condo is the 2x4s, if you will, and the siding or the right to use that space. So when we do our impervious surface, we have to take that whole land mass. You can about imagine what it's like up in Easy Living and that where you got all the trailers stacked in there one on one, but they've got enough land and that it's usually not an issue. So, because all the 300s are all tied into it, it's all one
And
kind of
that's considered a condo development?
They're all, yep. So the
Houses don't have to be 15 feet apart. That's why they're like 10, 5.
Because they called it a condo.
this condo plat, of Easy Living, and that, so the cabins down by the lake, those are the unit 100s. And then the park models, which look like they're, full homes almost now. And that in the middle, those are the unit 200s. And then the actual travel trailers, the new part of the campground is the unit 300, which are in the back. And that, but because we have to count the whole land area, there's, almost 20 acres there. And that, so they can have tons of impervious surface.
And that whole thing is considered condominiums.
That's a very,
That's not,
odd condo because they condoed out lots too. Usually in the condo, like I said, you have your footprint of your building. And as far as zoning, we don't have a lot of issues with them because as long as they get condo association approval, we don't have to worry about setbacks and that because they're able to keep on growing. And then later on down the road, hopefully they do an addendum to their condo plat to change the mapping to fit their new building footprint. Which they don't like to do, of course, because that costs money. But like Easy Living up there, they actually did lots like that. So your condo unit is a lot, 25 or 40 feet wide by 50 feet long. And that. So it gets to be a lot more complicated.
they're all pretty tight. So this is like a regular campground where you had to have that open space. This way they can get 8 more in that line right there. But have to have 15-foot space, so each one gains, that's 30 feet. Well, now you got another lot in between each one. So there's almost a trailer between the trailer.
We're actually going out there in that in the next couple of days here and that because they're having sewer issues and that, and now they've got all these lots and that nobody wants the sewer on their lot because they're so limited in space too, so they're trying to do a big comprehensive plan on trying to get a sewer put in their common area and then link everything together. So it's not very ideal compared to whereas if they only had their footprint, then the common area would be everywhere. It'd be a lot easier.
I've never heard of a condo with models and, I always think of a condo as
A house split in half.
they have attached walls. They might be 12 stories high, like you see in Florida and stuff.
They work down there, yeah, but these are, yep. So they basically took their campground map, said, okay, here's your lot, and that now we're gonna sell it to you, and that's, you have ownership of that space or the right to use that space, and that's what they did. So
You rent that piece of land that pays sewer, water, electric, and all that shit.
Right, that's exactly. Handmade.
Short of a TP, huh?
I saw them for 300,000 like in Florida.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
my
300,000.
goodness.
All right, so that's got started. That one we'll probably just put back on our meetings, just to keep able to read some of this and go through it again.
You want me to try to take and work up a version of that would actually fit our ordinance?
Yeah, because then we're gonna have to refer to 703 and some of that stuff here too. Do you have one of these?
Yeah, I got 703. Yep. Pretty
Fun to read. Yeah,
Maybe
just see how it
your
works.
copy, it's probably all marked up already.
No, I didn't.
Those are generally a way that are considered as a way to get around density. And so that's why I think we really have to fall into like a different type of use like this to try to regulate it. So anyway, and we'll probably never, hopefully never have any of them come through in that, but at least we would have something to pull back on or fall back on and say, no, this isn't allowed because of this.
And the other way was, like I was thinking too, is if we make a zoning district for it, they have to start at the town to change their zoning. Fight would start there. Can't get it through the town, it wouldn't come down. You know, that it has to, you know, maybe even
Depending on the zoning districts, yep, yep.
put it that it can only be in a certain zoning district, then they have to change that zoning. Get it, most of them, the way it sounds, wouldn't change it. You know,
Well, because it can affect their infrastructure, you know, that.
it affects a lot.
That they have more people there, you know, and stuff, so.
yeah, that much heavy use. So, okay, so that'll just keep on our discussion,
Thanks, Jason.
Bet, thank you.
okay?
Yeah.
Good. We have a presentation coming.
Sure.
Yes,
Can I just set the table
sure.
for our guests here?
Here, oh,
Yeah.
okay, these are I didn't know if they were here to fight or what. Been such good meetings lately. Okay, yes, do that, please.
Per request of our county administrator and some of the elected officials, we asked Melanie Kleiss and Alyssa Otten, is that right? To come and speak on behalf of the National Heritage Area Initiative. So they're here today and to talk about, provide us an update of that initiative as well as answer any of your questions. In your packet was a bunch of material that they provided.
There's.
I didn't get it.
The end of the packet after the.
Other 100 pages, I don't have. I'll get some afterwards.
I probably got.
Well, let's have them, yeah, sweet.
It's been a couple of years since, this initiative started, and so I think it'd be healthy to have an update and see where that initiative is at. And that's why the guests are here.
Sure. Yes, come on up.
I have a PowerPoint on this. Okay. Hi, good to see you. We're neighbors in St. Croix Falls, so.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for having us here. And I just have to say, it was so nice to drive out here. I lived in St. Croix Falls and moved to St. Paul 5 years ago for a job, and just coming back is, oh, I love it. Miss it a lot.
It's pretty driving down the hill today.
Oh, yeah, that's so beautiful. So I wanted to start out by giving you a little bit of background, because this would be the only national heritage area in all of Minnesota or Wisconsin. There's not a lot of familiarity with that here. There's 55 in the country overall, but we don't have any in either state. So to just give you a little background, because it's a very different thing. It started under the Reagan administration. The first one created was in 1984. And the intention behind it was, with public land ownership, there's benefits and there's drawbacks. What the Reagan administration wanted to do was convey the benefits of public land ownership without actual public land ownership or control. And I don't know if they did studies or they just guessed on this, but it has worked beautifully. It's brilliant. The benefits, so there's not even an umbrella law for national heritage areas. Each heritage area gets its own distinct bill so that there isn't any overarching control from federal government or from any law or anything. They're each individually controlled by the local area. And it's very specific in the bill, and it sounds like You probably haven't read the 13-page proposed bill in the packet. I read it, skimmed through it once myself, but it's very clear that there's not only no public ownership, but also no control beyond anything that's already in place. So it's completely controlled by local people who live here and the local governments. And it's locally administered. And the only things that happen federally is that the Secretary of the Department of Interior approves the management plan that we create here among all the entities, involved, all the counties and people who are interested who live here. And then we have to report because we get federal money every year that we have to match, that would go towards the things we want them to go towards that we put in our own plan. So we go to the next page. So, oh, that didn't align correctly. I don't know, it must be my program. This is not supposed to look like this. So we're called the North Woods and Waters of the St. Croix Heritage Area. We're a nonprofit that would be the coordinating entity, but really just to make sure that everybody in this region of the St. Croix River watershed, and I'll show you what that covers. Yep, that's the map. If you go back briefly though, to promote the natural, cultural, and historic resources of the St. Croix River. Thank you. And so here's the region, the whole region. And it's really, so we've talked about this a lot in our organization too. What are these benefits of public land ownership that we're getting without the ownership and control? And what it, so far to us, we've been working on this. I've been involved the last year and a half, but I heard about it going on 10 years ago because it started about 12 years ago. Basically, it's branding and identity and coordination. It's really to play unique resources in our own history and our own culture in this area. And it includes, 2 states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, 4 Ojibwe bands have property in this area, 7,700 square miles, 18 counties, the 32 sub-watersheds, that means the tributaries that directly or indirectly feed in, 114 zip codes, and 12,000 years of history. So there's a lot that we can work with, and we all decide what of all this stuff we want to do and how to leverage that. Really basically promote the area. Personally, and I think this is reflected in our organization's stated goals that we had to really winnow down, and there are 1,200 people and organizations throughout the region that helped with this. The primary focus is on local economy. Slide, please. So this is what I referred to about all the heritage areas in the country so far. 55 spread out, a lot of them in the east, which kind of makes sense. Their settlement, history started out there more. So there's kind of more awareness of history. But as you'll notice, there really isn't, it's a very bipartisan kind of effort. There's no real distinction between red and blue states here. And that's what I love about it too, is that it's really this collective, it's about people who live in an area. So it's about the people who live here in our region, deciding what we want to do and how we want to coordinate to highlight and make sure that the resources that we have that are important to us are protected for us. And so, like I said, 55 national heritage areas that celebrate places with important connections to our country's culture. And so here are the 3, and again, this got a little bit translated strangely with the formatting, but 3 main steps to get to the designation. The first is a feasibility study. It took about 6 years to do that. Like I said, 1,200 people, organizations, government entities like yourselves contributing to that. And I have copies of the short version and the long version, if you want to look at them, because you don't have enough to read, I hear. So that was finished in 2015. And then
fulfilling the National Park Service criteria. The reason the National Park Service, they don't have any control over any of this. They just do recommendations. But it's again, you know, the Reagan administration trying to make this more like those, you know, national parks and national monuments, the benefits of those areas, which the National Park Service works on, without them having any control or any say in what we do. So they have 10 criteria and they make a recommendation, and it's strongly recommended that they sign off and say, okay, we have all the criteria before you try to go and get Congress to pass the act. And we did fulfill all the criteria as of February of this year. So this is good timing to update you about that. And right now, we're working on the Congress, the House and Senate representatives in both areas. We have interest from all of them. No one has said, we're not going to do this. And we're talking and having conversations with all of them. So it's really great that way. Yeah. So NHA is National Heritage Areas. Oh, and I just wanted to say too, sometimes there's been, I think, confusion. I was confused too when I first heard about them. Heritage, I think for a lot of people makes us think of historic. When we think of historic property, there are ridiculous numbers of controls and restrictions. And so I think it's unfortunate the two can get confused because this is the opposite. And obviously, you know, the Reagan administration put this under the national parks section, not the historic section, for that reason, because getting the benefits of that without any kind of control. And so the 6 major areas recipe is the acronym I think someone in our organization came up with, which is kind of nice. Recreation, education, conservation, interpretation, preservation, and economic development, I think, is unsuitably at the bottom because that's our primary focus among our goals. But all of these things, they're all to the extent that we, as the people who live here and through our local governments, decide that we want to do them and in what way. There's absolutely no definition anywhere in the act or in anything what we have to do there. So it's all up to us. So like I said, they're locally planned and managed, and usually, you know, there's always a coordinating entity which is responsible for making sure that all the money is spent in the way that it's supposed to be spent or re-granted. We'd be getting potentially up to about $650,000 total a year, matching federal dollars, dollar for dollar. They want to make sure that there's actually local support before we get money from the federal government. But a lot of it would be re-granted. So for example, festivals like Fall Festival or Winter Festival, county fairs, craft fairs, all these kind of things that we want to highlight and bring attention to and bring more money in for those things. Those are the kinds of things that for our management plan and working with all the people in the region, we can help fund those things and support them and, you know, structure and all that. As I said, established to enact Congress. National Park Service provides technical assistance. That's the most that they're involved. After establishing those criteria, they don't have any say in how, except the Secretary of the Interior would approve our management plan or not being within the act of Congress. So, you know, follow what Congress has had to do as far as focusing on the heritage, culture, resources, that kind of thing. And we can't use federal money. It's in all caps actually in that statute to acquire land, and don't have any regulatory power whatsoever. I think that it would be just antithetical to it because people who live here they're the ones who decide what to do, and that's why there's absolutely no control over outside things. The only control that happens is already in place. So your way that things are governed here now is exactly how it would continue. It's just you decide how to coordinate and how to brand and market and really bring more money in to support the things that you want to support. So here's the goals that I mentioned. These came through the feasibility process. So 3 main goals, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the first one, which is the creating sustainable economic opportunities. This is a local economy focus, which I personally am most excited about. But to do that, there's also connecting the region. So connecting the different counties and organizations to help preserve and enhance these resources that we're talking about, historical, cultural, and natural, that exist within our nationally distinctive region. And then in line with that, increasing awareness and understanding. So this is the communication, demonstrates our stories about heritage and the resources that we have to, first of all, raise awareness among and provide educational opportunities for the region's residents, for people who live here, and also to promote and interpret the region to visitors, global audience, people coming from outside to spend their money. And there's a really neat a number of studies that show that after a heritage area is designated, the amount of dollars that each visitor spends goes up. So it's not necessarily that you're getting more traffic, and you're getting more tourism, but you're getting more money. People are here and they're more interested in stuff and they're spending more money. So I keep going to the economic stuff before I get to the slides. Now it's time for that. So there's a number of studies about how national heritage areas support regional economies, and these are studies that are after the fact that look at what changed after they were designated. There was this big study done recently about overall national benefit, and they found $12.9 billion in extra economic activity, money coming into areas that are national historic areas, 148,000 jobs. So our question was, and this hadn't been done before, how do we predict or anticipate how much impact we'd have here? And so we connected with the people at Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota. We got some grad students to do this for us. And they spent over $1,000 or 1,000 hours working on this. Normally they would charge $30,000 for this, but they found some McKnight Foundation funding for us to have that money. We're pretty much all volunteer run, have just some part-time administrative help and communication help. So they did this for us. They just finished in May, and go to the next slide. So it was these students, and it was, May 5th that they did this. And this was really exciting because it hadn't been done in the country before, doing a very intentional economic analysis. And they went about it. Of course, there's always uncertainty. There's a range of possibilities for each outcome they're looking at, but they went conservatively on each one. We wanted that as well because we don't want to overpromise. We'd rather exceed expectations when we go forward. So here's their, a sum result. They gave us like a 20-page report, but these are the main points. Within 2 years of designation, so let's say we get the act of Congress passed now, 2 years from now, we'd have $7 million extra dollars coming in our region every year. So that second year, we see that much money coming in. There'd be 6,000 extra jobs, full jobs generated and supported, of which 1,300 are leisure and hospitality related, which I was really surprised. I thought there's going to be so much, this is about tourism, right? So wouldn't there be almost all jobs would be like this? But a lot of this is support jobs and things like chambers of commerce and people who live here and doing their work already and needing more assistance in what they're doing. And then 5.4 million in tax revenue generated for state and local economies. So for your county, for example. I wanted to make a comment too about the tourism. So when I mentioned like those fall festivals before, it's not just about tons of tourism, it's intentional and planned. I think that's a big advantage of these heritage areas is that you set up this way of coordinating between counties and towns so that you're not just trying to pull in more people and have all this traffic. That's one reason why I love coming out here and love living here is that, you feel you're in the country, enjoy this place, and it's not crazy traffic like when you go back to St. Paul. So none of us want that. And so it's really about intentionally bringing in more money and support and building up this identity for our region without sacrificing, the things that we love about living here. Now I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa. She's going to do the other two goals, communication.
Again, my name is Alyssa. I've been involved with the heritage area for 11 years.
or so, but my job today is to talk about the second and third goals, sort of coordinating together, sharing our stories, not just sort of being out on your own, but really bringing everyone in to share this great place that we call home. So the three initiatives that we've really been working on in the last couple of years to really promote what we have here and the economic impact of becoming a heritage area. The first is called Links. This is a somewhat new free online calendar and event guide that we've put together. It was based on the highly successful St. Croix Splash Calendar, which is run by Outreach in St. Croix out of Stillwater. You've heard of it. It covers the lower watershed, really successful at promoting all sorts of arts, music, theater, arts and crafts fairs, that kind of thing, all these different events that want to know about. And so we thought we really need to create, sort of mimic and create this type of calendar for the entire watershed. And so we came up with Links, which is a nod to linking the different parts of the heritage area and the animal. But it's been really successful. It's totally free. Anyone who has a public event to share can submit on the website. It gets approved by the admins, and then it's on the web for anyone to find out about. Next one. So the second one is called Cleo, which is a website and a mobile app that sort of guides travelers and tourists to thousands of natural, historic, cultural institutions or sites throughout the United States. And so when we did that the feasibility study, there are over 400 different inventory sites within the watershed that could be on Cleo. We have a couple on there already, but the goal is to get all of these on there so that it's just one more place online for locals and visitors to the area to find. And so right now, we're working on finding money and resources to help these organizations put their sites online. You know, a lot of places are run on by volunteers or very minimal staff time. So putting something online is sort of the bottom of the list. And so we're really working on finding ways to help them get their sites online. And the last one, last year, as we know, COVID kind of changed the face of shopping in person, visiting in person, and a lot of doors were shut. So we wanted to find a way to promote online offerings from nonprofit organizations. And so Trading Post was born. We did 4 leading up to the holidays last year. It was a newsletter that we sent out to over 2,000 people and put on our social media channels. And it really promoted online products from places that were closed at the time. So their calendars, their memberships, their jars of honey, maple syrup, wild rice, that type of thing. And it was really, really well received. So we did another one in the spring, focusing on businesses that sell pollinator plants, native plantings, and that was well received too. So we're currently working on possibly one for the fall, pumpkins, corn mazes, all of that, and then as well as the holiday season, we're going to continue that. So just another way to help promote and share the things that we already have here. So these are 3 initiatives that we're currently working on. Speak to our second.
We would love to know if you have any questions or ideas and thoughts. How this is, we got a letter of support from Polk County, I think a few years ago. We were working on.
Yeah, that big feasibility study, the back of it is full of, I don't even know how many we have, but a huge amount of letters of support from 2013, 14, but a lot has happened.
So
yeah.
thank you for that. And then also, I would love to know your thoughts or ideas or questions.
I did attend one of the events. This was for COVID though. And it was I think they had it at the Interstate Park, I think, on the Taylor's Falls side. I think that's where it was. It was a group coming in and singing. It was very good. It was very well done. And they had I remember they had a trailer that had the name and stuff on it. That's why we're, but do you work with our economic development area too?
One of them, we do with a bunch of chambers of commerce and economic, quasi-public groups. So I'm not sure what exactly is the name of it.
Economic development.
Corporation.
Yeah, the Polk County.
EDC.
Every
Oh,
county.
sure. Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
one of
okay.
our board
Okay,
members
sure.
is the Chisago County,
Mhm.
Nancy Hoffman. So I'm sure there's.
If we haven't, then we will reach out again. We reached out to all of them, but we'll reach out again and see who suggested it, if that's
Terry
okay.
Howard, he's in this
Howard.
building.
Okay, great. We actually,
What if somebody in the middle doesn't want to be in it? What happens then?
yeah, there's absolutely no, I mean, and this is spelled out in the act, the bill as well, that there's no obligation to participate. There's no obligation to do anything.
There's
Yeah.
no buy-in at all.
Nope.
It's just an
It doesn't
organization wants
change.
to be involved and
Yeah.
use the branding that's created. They're able, and if not, they don't have to have
Yeah.
anything to do with it. Yep, and there's no regulation on.
Because I mean, it's entirely possible, maybe the group as a whole, maybe the region as a whole wants to go in a certain direction, but there's one or two counties that don't see that themselves, then they just, yeah, don't buy into it, or not buy into it, they don't participate. No buy. Yeah.
Would that mean there'd be a hole in it, you say? Or would the area still cover the 18 counties? But that county, one county wouldn't be involved.
Right.
Cover all, it would still be the 18 counties, just because that's the map that's designated by, that Congress designates, if it becomes designated. But if there's counties that aren't so involved, or, that it won't affect that.
Yeah, and it could be in the management plan, for example. We all create the management plan. If there's a county that says, we don't want to be part of this, I think you could probably put that in the management plan and just say, this county is not going to participate.
That's my one question then is, been going on for 12 years. Can you give me an idea why it isn't moving along?
It's a lot of work. This, I have not read this whole thing, I have to admit. This feasibility study and connecting with 1,200 people and organizations across this whole region. I mean, this is a large region for one thing. As for a heritage area, this is very large. And this document is huge and all the people. So that alone took 7 years. And then there's these criteria. And I think it's because of the scope of this and just trying to be, adaptable to all the interests and needs and wants in the whole region. We really worked hard on that too. So that's why that took until just this February. So it hasn't been that I've been slacking off, I promise. It's been just a lot of work.
And it's all volunteer based. I mean,
All
we do
volunteer.
have very minimal staff. I am a very, very part-time staff person, but was a volunteer for about 7 years before I transitioned into staff time. But it's very volunteer based. So it's been a really strong group of people with new ones coming, people leaving. But it's also that, we know the things that make this area important, but National Park Service said, nope, that's covered somewhere else in a different heritage area. So you have to find the thing that makes you the whole place in the country. So that took a lot of work to sort of make that.
There's some concerns too. I'm trying to, because I remember hearing about this years ago. Too. Concerns about if this area is designated a heritage area, people had concerns about, what does that mean? Is it going to be like, my house is on the National Historic Register of Homes now, if I want to paint the outside, I can only use these colors. Wasn't there concern
Yes.
of people about that though?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was referring to when heritage does remind you of historic and those restrictions. And unfortunately, the words are similar that way, but it has, like that would be completely opposite to what Reagan intended, obviously. And it's also specifically in the bill itself. If you look at page 12, skip ahead to page 12 of the proposed bill, it lays out, a full, I want to say 2 pages of, these are the things that cannot happen in a heritage area. Land ownership, any regulatory control, related to the heritage area. It's all just whoever, all the mechanisms already in place.
So it
It's
doesn't-
completely local.
It doesn't have any impact on a landowner or what they
Zero.
can do or can't do or.
And just one more thing as far as the timing too. Apparently sometimes it takes 20 years. It's not unusual to take a long time. Personally, I think that's a good thing because then you give everyone time to find out about it and voice their objections. I mean, we've been doing that and having that conversation through the region. I'm glad for it. I would rather have that happen than suddenly there's a heritage area designated and people are like, what does that mean? Do I have to paint my house? And have this, flurry of disappointment and rather get it out.
So how do you brand an area? Can you put the map up? I mean, it goes from to Hayward
Yeah.
into the cities. I mean, what a difference.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah,
beautiful-
I mean, how do you brand that big of an area? How do you, that's such a huge area, does it?
It isn't like it's 5 miles along the riverway.
I mean,
It's way,
it
way.
goes, how far? It goes all the way up to the National Forest, the Schwamigan, the Nicollet one.
Yeah.
To, on the Minnesota side.
Yeah.
So how do you brand something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so we're already talking with the Chambers of Commerce and the economic development groups throughout the region about it. I have to tell you, they're all very excited about it. It's more about coordinating. And so right now, we haven't figured out branding as far as colors or logos or anything because we're not even in a heritage area yet. But it's more about coordinating and knowing what everyone's doing, the different events, and the messaging. What are you saying about these events? How are you drawing people there? And let's say Burnett County is drawing people for big gust days. I worked in Burnett County, I worked in Grantsburg for a number of years. They're saying, big gust days is about what life was like 100 years ago, because that's kind of when Big Gust was alive, and that's the local hero there. Now, Polk County finds out about that and talks with them about that and says, okay, we've had this idea for a while about doing something historic here too, celebrating, an agricultural, the history of agriculture in our area, that kind of really got going about 100 years ago. And so you're kind of piggybacking off of these things and kind of, getting lists from each other and bringing more people to the events that you want more people at to bring more money to your area from outside. So that's just one example. It's not, I know that usually when we say something's, an area is designated like a national park, where the boundary is, or put up signs where the boundary is. That's not really what this is. This is more about, here are all the entities that can coordinate. Here are all the entities that qualify for getting funding and support through what money we raise after we're designated. We'll, give some money to Big Gust Days, we'll give some money to the agricultural festival here, and because they're both about kind of the identity of the area and those resources and history that we're all out of.
There would be welcome to the North Woods and Waters of the St. Croix National Heritage Area signs at major points coming in and out. I mean, if you go down to Iowa and you enter silos and smokestacks, there's a visitor center about the heritage area, about all the different things you can do there, and there's signage. The entire state of Tennessee is a national heritage area. I think it's Kentucky or Tennessee, one of them. The whole thing is a heritage area. So it is about branding, but just there would be hubs. The other thing that we've talked a lot about, and we haven't quite gotten there yet, is doing a passport program. So we would have fun, a little passport that had all these different places that if you visited each one throughout the watershed, you get a little link stall or so your little stuffed animal or something like that to create sort of, these passport programs are a good way to sort of bring a bunch of places together. So those are some other examples.
Yes, and again, completely voluntarily. If you didn't want to be in the passport, you didn't have to. Yeah. And if you didn't want to,
Have our brochures, you
would have to. Or beyond links or Cleo, it's all just completely voluntary. I would really like to know, though, hearing our responses, what things that sound good to you and what things you're still not so sure about. Because we're really trying to, understand and also adjust and adapt so that, it would be great if all the counties participate. That'd be great, I think, for everybody. But, we want to make sure to meet your concerns.
It's way too big.
So,
If you got $1 million, you could give everybody one. You know?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I mean, you got the events that in that area are just unbelievable. How many events? How would you help them all? How would you decide which one to help and which one not? I mean, when you look at that many, holy man, there's enough. You look at Bayfield County, that I get stuff from that way. There's something in these little towns every week. So all of a sudden you take that and go all over, you've probably got 1,200 events this week in that area. How do you know?
Well, and a lot of that could be, all of those events, if they wanted to put it on our links calendar, then it would be out there. If they wanted to apply for a re-granting program, then they could be eligible to earn that money. Those are just my top two thoughts. But it's huge. And like I said, the whole state of Tennessee is one, and it's going really, it's working beautifully. So that's true. And some of them are very small. I mean, there's one about Lincoln. Well, Lincoln's homestead is small, but
But I mean, that's quite an area.
Right.
I mean, you're up to Duluth and stuff.
I totally hear what you're saying when you think about it from the perspective of, I said we're going to get about 650, once we're underway and we have the management, we'll get $650,000 that we can spend and re-grant and work on promoting this stuff. And that doesn't sound like very much spread out over this area. Just to remember though, like what Alyssa said, is that it's also about this coordination, these resources, the online, and marketing and coordinating resources that we have and that we're building. But also that economic study was very particular. So they looked at 25 heritage areas, looked at their economics. They filtered out all the, economic gains that just happened anyway. They looked specifically just at what the designation did. And applying it to our area conservatively, they found that after 2 years, we get $7 million in additional income throughout the region. That is a little bit bigger number. And then one thing that we didn't include on that block there, one of their summaries, because sometimes people didn't quite understand what it meant, but I think it's significant, is what that comes down to is about $1,000 per person who lives here. And that's an increase in wages based on the amount of income coming in. So that's just at the 2-year mark. It keeps going up after that. Every single heritage area that has been studied, the 25 that have been, more detailed, studied economically that way, it keeps going up from there. But the 2-year mark is a very, more specific point that they were able to really hone in on. Once you go to 5 years and 10 years, it all goes up, but it can vary depending on what the heritage area does. Like the state of Tennessee, what do they do with it versus maybe a city block in Boston? What do they do with it? It varies so much that it starts to get wider and wider. They did give us those conservative estimates on those marks too, and it just keeps going up as far as the amount of money that comes in. But we didn't really want to focus on that because we feel like this is the more the more known, and it's also closer in time, 5 years and 10 years from now. Who knows what we're doing.
Is it easier to get money if you're designated?
Yeah, the only way to get money is designated. So we're not getting any funding right now at all.
Separate entity though, if you're a heritage area, do they have like a fund for those areas only?
Oh, yeah, so
See
in
what I'm
the,
saying? I mean,
yes.
because otherwise you got just general help, you could just ask for it, but I mean. they have
this is another way, which I love, that the Reagan administration set it up so that there's not a general fund. There's no umbrella over all the heritage areas. They're all distinct. So in the bill for our heritage area, it says there'll be a total over 15 years of up to $10 million that would go towards this heritage area from the federal government. We would have to fundraise to match every single one of those dollars as we get them, to demonstrate the local support. But and then the bill would be up for renewal at the end of those 15 years. Other heritage areas renew, and they might change the dollar amount in the next renewal, that sort of thing, and see how it's going.
Yep, go ahead.
So once the NHA designation is passed through Congress, my question is kind of building on Chairman O'Connell's question. So you have $650,000 available annually for local groups, whether it's a chamber, an EDC, a county fair, to apply for. It's a matching grant, I assume, right? Dollar for dollar.
Well, we match it, but we don't necessarily require others to match it, right?
Well, I guess my question is, who administers the grant? Is it NPS then? Is this?
So part of what the funding, what that 650 funds an executive director and staff to operate the sort of administrative side of it. And am I understanding, right? Isn't that right? That we would be the ones basically, not we, but the people working for the heritage area would be the ones regranting.
The coordinating entity, which is, typically the nonprofit or the university, whatever it is the one that has the responsibility and obligation to make sure that the money goes in ways that the management plan says. The management plan is what all the groups and the counties and entities and everyone decide what it's going to be. And so then we're the ones responsible for making sure that goes in the way that management says. And it's all very open. We're required, I think in the bill, it says we have to have at least two open meetings a year about the management plan and how it's being implemented. So that it's all in the open and I think all the books have to be open all the time. All the money being spent, where it's going, where it's planned to go and stuff. Does that answer? Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
A short and sweet, or do we need a short break?
It's not gonna take too long.
It'll be pretty short, but if you want a break, I can
Nope,
wait.
nope, come on now.
Alrighty, I'm Colton with Land and Water, stepping in for Caitlin today to talk about the Aquatic Invasive Species Strategic Plan. I'll call it AIS Strategic Plan. You do have it in your packet. You have the red line items, which are the changes that have been updated in the plan. The full plan can be found on the county website under Environmental Services, and then just under the homepage of Land and Water is the full plan. So the Polk County Land and Water's Aquatic Invasive Species Strategic Plan was due for an update in 2021. The update is meant to adjust goals and actions based on the current AIS situation with within the county. When new findings of AIS occur, management strategies need to be changed, and modified for the greatest impact to reduce the spread of invasives in the county. The reason for the plan is to receive AIS grant funding from the DNR, which the current grant we have covered the staff time for the plan update. The DNR requires board approval along with public comment, or for it to be updated correctly. The public comment has already, or the public has already had a chance to provide input for the update. We presented to the Polk County Lakes and Rivers Association twice, and emailed all the Lake District and Association presidents, asking for their input if there's anything they'd like to see added to it. This will also require full county board approval. We would probably be hoping for the December county board. Basically, the changes to note in your packet. First is support water bodies with the installation of decontamination stations. The ordinance just passed that you guys have done to, if a decontamination station is present, that you must use it at a public boat landing or wherever it's provided. We added another program that's a DNR program, which is the Waterfowl Outreach Program, which is just working with or targeting a new audience on AIS prevention. You'll also see in there that SCRA, which is the St. Croix River Association, that's crossed off through the entire packet. They changed their name to the Wild Rivers Conservancy, so we're still working with them. It's just a different name, so that's the reason they're crossed off. We changed the AIS monitoring from a watershed perspective more to a proximity of a lake or relation to the lake, such as Deer Lake. Wapples downstream, so focus on that, but also Bone Lake, where it's got muskies as well, and they're interested in a lot of traffic between the two lakes. Provide AIS outreach to fishing tournaments. I actually did this summer gave a presentation at the Indian Head Pro Muskie Tournament. That's between Deer and Bone, discussing zebra mussels and prevention steps. Then some of the edits towards the end of the red line items is changes in the DNR grant program, and they've changed some of the names of the programs. They're still basically the same. Just that stuff has changed. The update would be good until 2025.
Did a lot of people attend sessions, like you said, you had an Indian head?
So at the Indian Head tournament, they have a required meeting on Friday night before the tournament. So I actually just presented at the required meeting. So there was 140 anglers there, plus whoever's helping run the outreach events like that.
Does this require us to have a public hearing in our meeting? Not just have it out for public comment
And then approved by full county.
and then approve. So then we get, and if we move it on to the, what did you think, the December one?
Yeah, so if you guys were to pass it, approve it today, then we'd probably just put on the December one, because I know the November one's pretty busy.
Would it be full? Sure.
Yeah.
We could do November, December.
We could see what's coming up. Yeah, if we could prove it and then see which two meetings we could put it on.
Or it needs full county board or just?
Yeah, so I talked with Caitlin today, and she has said that she thought it did need full county board. I talked with Bob yesterday, and we had thought it was just the ESC committee, but she was pretty sure that it was.
You guys are the LCC as
Yeah,
well.
that's
so
why.
We thought it was just this committee, but it would probably be just a consent item.
I would think so, yeah. So I mean, then we could do it in November and get it done with if it was on the consent agenda. I would
On
think,
your recommendation.
yeah, for recommendation. Yeah. Because I think we do the forestry one too, and I think that way too, because it's streamlined. So, well, then I would entertain a motion. Okay, Tracy, is there a second?
Second.
And then we'll do it on the consent agenda, or no, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass it first. That would, could move on to consent agenda in November. That would just save us. Go.
Yeah, you guys, anything else?
We're short and sweet.
All right, perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
They rank these Monday night. Is Tim here? We gotta get him.
Yeah, we get
Should we take a short break now? I gotta stretch. Yes. Yeah, yeah, because we don't have much, do we? That's about it right now.
Yep, that and just set the next
Yeah.
meeting's agenda. Yeah.
And set up the next meeting. Yeah, so we're sitting pretty good. Couple. Now we might.
Yeah.
We put that on the next one, Jason. Have Jason come about where we can put the signs.
I think we're gonna do it internally.
Okay. So you want me in there to push?
You'll have to talk to Jeff.
Okay. I'll have to come in and push.
We
Nothing-
did
Nothing
do-
wrong with that.
We did do site visits to all the county landings.
Kim-
Figured out.
Kim saw the picture.
Okay, I saw some of the pictures.
So those are the maps that we had.
Yeah,
done.
and that's,
We also do have photos of each
Yep.
spot that we were in.
sure.
Shared.
We're gonna order the signs today.
Yep.
4x8.
Cool.
All.
Parks is gonna put them up.
Well, I just think the sooner the better, so it's up right away in the spring, because then you can't get around in the spring and all that. Plus it's there for the winter people,
Cool things ordering the materials to the
you know.
for posts. And the color.
Yeah. All.
Now, did any other groups come in yet, or are they gonna wait
So
to see?
we decided, what I kind of decided on is we're just gonna order the county ones first because it's just basically a set price for that.
Yeah,
And figure instead of delaying it, waiting back here for lane groups, let's just get them ordered.
them and get 'em on.
Get them here.
and they might jump on
Yeah.
it
Yeah, get
after
them-
they see it.
Yep, get the materials, yep, and then have park set up.
As
As long as they give, right? Right.
Yeah, there's a few lakes looking
We're
into
gonna
the,
go,
yeah, but they're looking.
They're gonna put pressure on it.
Yeah, so with those ones, I'm not sure if they endorse signage as well. They should. Just,
Yeah, it was.
it's like such a big unit. I don't know if they have their own. Because if that one would have the step on how to use that system.
But they still should have the sign with the ordinance on it.
Yeah.
Even the smaller one, just so that we're consistent at each one to have the same sign.
But I plan to reach out all the lakes and kind of see and then share the different.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
There wasn't any cost savings in a bulk order.
So,
Yeah.
well, it's because, so we got a quote from a different company that was over $100 cheaper. So we were like, yeah, we're gonna go with this.
Yeah.
Pretty good deal. And we're gonna get even the higher quality sign. We're gonna go with the higher quality, better.
Sure.
We utilize
Last
areas of Wyoming.
Yeah.
And all the other bridges.
Oh, sure.
All right, well, sounds good. We'll actually probably go order those signs before lunch then.
Cool.
So, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Cole.
Every week.
Right, yeah.
You got everything done.
I tried in that. So the parents-
Got a lot.
It's,
Yeah. We got
So
big
they don't have that.
projects, because they've got a lot of those projects that they. You know, 'cause it's like people had ideas for projects. but They need more information to be able to say, yeah, that's. Yeah, what they.
Feasibility.
Marty.
Done at home.
Yeah.
Probably for the weekends, might be.
I mean, really though.
Good luck with the presentation.
No.
Oh, Tim.
Well,
Yeah, I haven't gotten through Malta yet. So I'll go through notes and stuff. So, yeah, I sent him a reminder email this morning and talked to him to get that to me ASAP so I can send it out.
Yeah, early.
Yep.
Anything. Because the clubs did all the work.
Sure.
Where's your,
Yeah.
We gotta put all this together.
And the people.
Framework class.
Because they did cultural.
Crazy matches up.
because I never
So,
used it. So. staff.
Wednesday, later in the afternoon, he actually wasn't feeling well. He was working on tractor drag or something
Here's the top
after
ones.
we've done it. Real short winded. Well, that's what I thought, you know. He called before I went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Answered that.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus,
Yeah.
in his
I
mom.
mean, it was good to have all these different user groups. They were
You know,
very.
they tell me Melvin's only got like one lung between anybody.
oh,
Or whatever. Scarlet fever.
yeah. no.
But, blood clots in his lungs, so they kept him for a couple of days. And, he's home now, as doctor said, gotta lay low for a couple.
That,
There. So we're just trying to increase the say.
Yeah.
Yeah, one has to wonder, but,
Other things, other people that could use it.
say, I was gonna ask you.
That pose any risk. Then, technically, I always look at there. They want
Or
You're-
Yeah, you could eat a lot.
you know, you can schedule and then reschedule.
I could use it like.
So,
They kind of.
Yeah.
I have no idea, because it's not like. Your fellow.
Yeah, heritage stuff. I did. I can remember sitting through assessment.
Oh,
I was there with you at the NPS building. We had the kids from Festival Theater do a dance. They did like a play.
Oh, yeah, it might have been. Yeah,
That was like in 2000.
yeah, I remember. I just remember having that. But we owned a house that was on the National Historic Register once in Colorado. And
What happened Monday?
All right.
How big of a list we got?
It's a pretty good sized list. I think each user group has at least, 5 projects, and some have laundry lists of maybe 20. I think hiking have quite a few. Yeah, we met on Monday night with PTAG. Went over the decision matrix and the weighting criteria first, the stuff that you guys looked at and sent back to me from last meeting. They got thumbs up from that stuff. We had a discussion about how that stuff would get weighted, and it's just a slight weighting based on the top criteria versus the lowest ones. So like trail connectivity, of course, as you might guess, was one of the top ones. Community connections, grant availability, those kinds of things were the top criteria that they would like to see used for that decision matrix. We also released that project list, and we released it based on the user groups, because I think, as I explained last time, we're going to use the decision matrix to compare projects within the user group. So ATV projects are compared against the other ATV projects, not ATV versus biking or hiking versus cross-country skiing. there was definitely some discussion about the project list and making sure that it was representative of what those user groups are looking for. One of the results from that is we gave PTAG the opportunity to look at the list and give us feedback by Friday. Any changes or missing things could be added to that list. Share some of the notes from the stakeholder groups with them to help them with that too. Then our original plan was to talk with PTAG and have them rank them, each individual project. And as we went through that, kind of became clear and the discussion led to they weren't super comfortable and didn't feel like they had the knowledge in order to fill that stuff out accurately. So what they requested we do is Alta, along with some assistance from staff, is to, after they finalize that criteria, is to rank them or score them and give that information back to them prior to the next meeting so that they can look at it and give us feedback on that. So something for them to look at and something for them to say like, yeah, that looks good, or no, that doesn't. Why did you rank it, or why did you score it that way? The next meeting is going to be on the 27th in the evening, like usual, at 5 o'clock. And that's where they'll go over the updated project list and the scoring that was done by Alta with assistance from staff, and kind of look at the projects and hopefully come up with their recommendations that would then be forwarded on to you guys for your October 6th budget consideration.
They got a pretty good sized meeting coming up though.
Here, if you don't mind, so really, in essence, PTAG didn't think they had enough knowledge to score them. Alta's gonna score them along with staff. We'll bring back to PTAG on the 27th. Again, open invitation to you all. And again, we meet upstairs 5 to 7 on that. That should be a really qualitative meeting because we'll present high priority projects. Again, consultant is scoring them. That's an opportunity for PTAG to find and adjust those high priority projects. So that one should be pretty productive. So again, I just want to share with you and invite you to consider.
We have a meeting on the 4th, tentatively scheduled in case we need it if stuff doesn't get finalized on the 27th, but the goal is to get it done on the 27th. And just for everyone's information, the rankings that we gave you, or the opportunity to rank those criteria, that's just a tool, right? So we're just trying to give it some structure to say, like, these are the things you said matter when you're judging these projects. This is how they shook out when we applied numbers to them, when we applied the scoring to them. They could choose the 4th ranked project if they think that that's the most appropriate one for the county to pursue. It's just a way of saying, this is how they shook out. What do you think?
Yeah.
So it doesn't hold their hand to say that, or yours to say like you have to choose the top project. It's just a way of structuring them and giving them some sort of objective ranking to say like these things.
Project could cost $8 million.
Right.
You know, so we can't do it. You know, we got to look at it that way too. So that's good. Okay.
But really, based on the ranking they're using, that wouldn't happen.
Should.
It would, because it should.
Should.
Yeah. it should.
I would. Should.
It should.
That's a big criteria,
Yeah.
project cost. So
Yeah.
if it's a high-end cost, it's not going to rank.
But they think we have that money. We had so much COVID money, we're gonna throw it out the door. If it's under 4 million, let's go.
Yeah. The way
That's
to
the way
make
everybody's been talking.
Your pants are on fire. You got a hole burning in your pocket, I
Yes.
can tell.
It's, gosh, the people that want to spend $4 million is unreal. What, it don't matter. Just, if you get it to us, we know what we want.
we have it structured so that in the matrix, it says if it costs over a certain amount, it gets the lowest rank.
Yes,
Yeah.
so
So
I mean, it's still
it's
gonna,
one of 13 or whatever.
it'll get etched in there a little. So. All right, so that'll be that meeting. Okay. No surprises in that, really, so far.
I don't think so. I think there was some debate about how specific or broad some of those projects should be, you know, and I think the way that that information is going to be presented and organized in this process and in this plan was talked about too, to make sure that all the considerations, all the projects, no matter how big or specific, were in part of that list, so that, again, one of the goals of this project is to get projects that can happen for these user groups now, but also to set up, you know, on a project list for the future.
Yeah.
So making sure that that all
Still
is
there.
included.
My question is, once you get your list compiled, you know, highest to low, whatever, where do you get your dollar amount as to what those projects are? Something like that.
Right now, we're getting like really back of the napkin, like general, like, is it 4 figures, 5 figures, 6 figures kind of?
No, this is all brand new.
Yeah, it's pretty nebulous at this point. We're just trying to get order of magnitude down, and then so you guys can have a rough figure to budget for it, and then the investigation about the specific.
Yeah. Kind of both.
The investigation about the specific cost of that project is gonna have to come after those projects are identified, and then we can investigate like feasibility, what acquisition would have to come, what materials would have. There's a lot of steps after that for actual costing. We're down to the dollar figure, you know, but we're trying to just get ballpark figures so you guys can say, hey, we need $500,000 next year for some of these projects.
Ballpark.
It's,
It's gonna be way.
Would or should. Way they do it, yeah. See,
No, it's gonna be interesting.
yeah. But they got, we gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if one's too high, you change the rate.
That's a really good point. I mean, we haven't historically done any investment in our
Yeah.
trails, so this is really complex. You all appreciate that. So, you know, the timeline we're tracking on is to provide you with some rough estimates for the 2022 budget. But after that, I mean, there's still planning going to be conducted throughout the end of the year. So
It's some RFPs
we're just
and
trying to
stuff.
earmark, dollars for next year. That's our goal, short term, but medium term goal is to future planning of those identified priority projects. So then we can hit the ground running.
Some might have to be done, like we said, in segments.
Oh, yeah. Some of these are long-term.
Some longer, it might be a 5-year deal, so much a year and stuff. Yeah. So,
Good question, Tracy.
I mean, that kind of seems like the key component. You know, it's like where's,
Some of those
Who's gonna rank these? I
shorter
mean-
term.
we are,
low
if it
cost.
comes to us, we get the
I mean,
rate.
yeah, but I mean, dollar wise, I mean, where does that person, I mean, who, I don't feel qualified enough to say, well, that's a $500,000 project and this is a $1,000.
well, that's the thing, you're gonna have to say like, for example, we're gonna install, 5 miles of new mountain bike trails. Then you need to say like, how wide is it gonna be, how long is it gonna be, what's the material surface, how much clearing is gonna have to go, so you have to do like a site plan and get all the
The
details.
state
figured
or a
out.
county trail, because the state trail's got
You have
different
to
specs.
buy property
Yeah.
for it, that kind of stuff.
Turn into this, and this could happen. You might need more time. So maybe I'll talk to Vince about this as well, but we'll see how much progress we make, but I always just, look at amending the budget in 2020. We don't have those figures. So, but I'll talk to Vince about that.
It had to be amended if it was too bad.
And maybe it's as, I don't want to say simple, but easier if we look at some of those quick, low cost things and get working on those. So we're doing something while we're still behind the scenes evaluating the ones that are bigger. Because,
Like parking lot at Summers, or fixing washouts, or fixing roads, yeah.
yeah,
So some of that.
It's the competing interests of getting a win or a project done now that's kind of low cost, easy to implement versus we have this trail network vision for whatever group you're looking for, and we want to have that happen at some point.
Yours is getting nothing done for a year.
well, as long as it's a project
Well,
that's
there's too much
getting
interest.
us there.
Right.
It's getting us there.
Yeah, they're getting us there and we're doing something. We're just not planning.
Yeah. Well, the park got done. That was nice. That park. So I mean, there's things starting to get done at least. And that was a nice thing to get done this year, I thought. It seems busy,
The parking lot is very
Because it's
the
big.
parking lots and that part, that loop there. So I mean, there's some things getting done. So that's what we gotta keep.
I mean, it's important we maintain what we have. Because we can't just keep getting more and more if we can't take care of what we already have. We've got to do both. That was the same question the group had though. And that's why staff and the consulting firm is going to take those initial stabs at some of that stuff because nobody felt comfortable. But how do you make an estimate on something that is this big? Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
about consulting engineering to drum up this big bill to figure this out either. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm not about either. 'Cause
That's
that's
the way I'm
wasted
fine.
money that you could put towards
Towards another
that
trail.
project.
Yeah.
So that's not about me.
All right. So that'll be interesting when we get that. And that'll be the next meeting.
Always
Oh.
said
Yes, it will be one.
Yeah.
It will be at the next
Yeah,
meeting.
if you have another one. October 6th.
All right. Well, thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Like, seriously, we're not going here.
So even though there's another Wednesday in September, we are sticking to the 1st and 3rd. So our next meeting would be October 6th. We'll have Mo back for an update on parks and trails. Basically going to be a standing agenda.
Standing.
Yep. Jason is,
Number 8, we shouldn't need. No, I don't think, or no.
Nope.
Will the
we won't need that.
auction be over?
That'll be an agenda item. I will bring you
That'll be a separate.
the highest bids for those 3 properties.
Okay.
Recall, there was 5 overall.
Yeah.
One, I'm working with the tribe. The other one, that one in,
Sliver, yeah.
I talked to the village of Clear Lake and the neighbor purchased it.
Oh, really?
Oh, good.
So we're getting rid of some of that
Yeah.
junky stuff.
So that'll be on the tax roll. It's not a big, tiny little corner.
Do have any pages that some of them trucks are using? So that'll be next. Okay. So that'll be number 8 kind of.
Right, those county-owned properties,
County-owned
those, the
properties.
results of the auction bid,
Yeah.
again, looked at it yesterday. It's a really interesting program. I'm new to it, so I'm fielding a lot of calls about, town dump, zoning, how to do a district change, how to bid, so it's interesting. So There is some
There's
interest.
people bidding on
Yeah,
it.
there are. There are some.
So that's what we need.
Bring those forward to you.
Now that was Vince's job, so he did a good job. And that land that we didn't need in that 700 parcel deal, didn't check, good job.
700 down to what, 690?
Get rid of 5, so we
Yeah.
have for 690. Oh, what fun.
Also on the 6th would be, I would like to introduce this, Eric Wojcik would love to present on the results of the groundwater study for the WAPO.
Yeah.
Watershed. So, if you're interested.
Invite the press for that one.
Sorry?
Invite the press for that one.
We did an outreach event last Thursday. UW Stevens Point put on a Zoom informational outreach session for those folks who had participated. They learned how they could mitigate their well test.
Okay.
So that was recorded. And so if anyone wants to see that, that's available. But, if you want to get down into some of the actual, comprehensive results, granted, we're holding that PII, that personal identifiable information, those addresses.
Yeah.
Themselves, but
Does he have like a general outline? He can give us
got
a
some maps
presentation.
done where there's some areas where there were high nitrates and phosphorus. if you're interested, that could be, offered up for October 6th. Also, we could look in the work plan in November. We have the Next Gen 911 to talk about. I could put that on the 6th, move that up, as well as dual addresses versus the grid system.
Yep.
Those are just informational.
Some informational ones, yeah. What would Eric's deal be?
That I think we could, I think he could stick to 20 minutes.
Pretty long way.
Guys,
He can't, he gets pretty pumped when he's done it. Let's give him a half hour, see what he says.
Half hour, okay.
See what he says. He'll still take 40.
The Summers Lake parking lot, we might have some more information, as Mo mentioned, some direction on extending that parking lot at Summers Lake. We still need to determine if the equestrian groups are interested in that in terms of, so we're gonna take the equine folks out there, see what they think. So that might be an October 20th agenda item. Zoning is, Jason's going to go on a vacation for a couple of weeks, so he won't be here on the 6th. So I don't anticipate any zoning issues. If there are, this will be before us. So, but back to 9C and 9D, I can put those on October 20th. So again, we're talking about the ag tourism or the educational farm stays for October 20th, as well as further discussion of the condo.
See if he could go on that one too, just in case we do want to discuss some of that.
For the
For a
6th?
couple weeks, yeah, even on the 6th, because we got some stuff. And if we don't have any updates on it, then we don't. We just, but at least if it's on there, we can discuss it.
Okay.
That'll probably come up now that it's getting out there. So, sure.
And of course, we'll have Tim back. That would take some time, because I think we'll have the
That one will
list
take some-
scored and prioritized for your consideration.
That one will give us some time. Land and water at any.
No, not.
How about for the signage? You want to do that internally, you said, or? you wanna
Yeah,
bring it to
that's,
us?
we're moving forward with that. Mo, as you know, got the, Fulton's purchasing the signs and materials today. The parks crew, so they would put them in this fall. So yeah, the decontamination signs at the 8 county-owned landings will be going up this year.
So that'll get the other ones kind of to know that we're doing it, like Ball Lake and some
Yeah,
of
Walt
those.
Lake has bigger plans.
Yeah.
They're going high-end, compressor and lighting. Yeah,
That's the one to beat?
Yeah.
That's the one to beat then?
Yeah.
well, I think there's a couple other lake associations looking at them as well. So looking at doing an upgrade.
They needed to sign the ordinance and that, so that's.
Ours will provide a template for them to consider. There's other vendors out there that offer higher end signage with the actual tools, step by step on how to decontaminate your watercraft, compressor for.
Once you get those signs up and some of the ones put their decontamination stations in, it would be nice to get feedback then to share with the ones who haven't.
Yeah, the chat, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Colton and Kalen will do. That's their job. Yep.
By each sheet now they're
We will have we have a blank spot on the signs. We were anticipating having our logo done by then. So we'll just wait, just put a sticker up.
Whole
for
county
now.
land and water's gonna have their own. It's like the health, you make up your own click. Put it on there. What do you got to lose?
We've already got about 30 of them.
I know. Different ones, they're all, just tweak a little. All right. The the Biden sign in Clayton, we got nothing to do with it. Right? Okay?
You're not even going there. on that.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Put that on the agenda.
I,
Put that on the agenda.
it's on private property. So Clayton's owned or not owned. That's how it's going on.
We're zoned,
Oh.
but people just, yeah, the whole forgiveness card, set of permission. Kind of the ranking, so.
Sending that out. All right.
It's not even.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Anything else first? I want to make sure everybody else has got their 2 cents in. Come on, is there a second?
He's still talking.
He was still talking and she cut him off.
I thought you were done. I thought you turned to look.
Are your
at
knees
me.
sore? She can cut you off at
Already
the
marked
knees.
it, you.
Got him at the knees. Are your knees sore up there?
Sorry.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are you sure?
All those in favor say